Welcome in, and what a joyous Sunday it is. Not only is Alabama an SEC champion, but they're on their way to the college football playoffs. We have got a ton to talk about. I'm joined, as always, by Kyle Henderson, the man who needs no introduction, but you already know I pride myself in giving them. Kyle, how you doing today?
I'm doing amazing. Look, I never lost hope in this team. I knew that this team would make the college football playoffs. I knew that this team would beat Georgia. The transformation of this team has been really something that has been a major storyline of college football, along with the transformation of Jalen Milroe. You have to rank the teams on how they are performing today. The four best teams, did the playoff committee get it right? I mean, they got one of them right. That's Alabama. And I think they got another one in Texas. Now, Washington and Michigan, I'm sure we're going to talk about that on the show. But I think there is one team, the Georgia Bulldogs, we saw play right here in beautiful Atlanta that is sitting on the outside looking in. So a lot to dive into. But most importantly, Alabama's victory over Georgia, who is the number one team, gets Alabama into the playoffs where they will play Michigan in the Rose Bowl.
We have some comments coming in. People uncomfortable with the rankings. And guys, I get it. Hath says the SEC committee. King says garbage committee. And guys, I'm all for good debate. That's a lot of fun. I love debate. And so for Hath and King, I guess the question is, if the committee has said multiple occasions, we're not after the four best, we're after the four most deserving, who's the four most deserving? And I guess that opens it up right now. Kyle, I'm going to ask you the question that I'm going to ask chat right now.
Okay.
Did the committee get it right?
Yes, I think the committee got it right in terms of percentage of 75%. I think the one team that was left out, as I said, was Georgia. I think that they were a better team than Washington. I think if you ask anybody, who would win between Georgia and Washington right now if they play this coming Saturday, I think an overwhelmingly amount would say that it's the Georgia Bulldogs. Same thing with Florida State. I had a little bit of anxiety the way that ESPN had the rankings kind of roll out, but I knew that Florida State wouldn't be in the playoffs just because the ACC is built different than the SEC. And I think the gauntlet of the SEC schedule really was something that you couldn't deny inside the committee room. And I think the play of Alabama on such a large stage against the number one team and winning by, look, it was 27-24. I don't think there was a point total that Alabama had to win by. I think it was just the fact that Alabama did control that game the entirety, and the fact they came out with a W against the number one ranked Bulldogs. Now, Florida State, I think if you're a Florida State fan, you're really upset because you did have, you've had this incredible season, an incredible turnaround around Mike Norvell. But the fact of the matter is, this isn't the same team with Jordan Travis, and I'm hard-pressed to say that you weren't a playoff team with Jordan Travis. They're on the outside looking in. They can finish off their season undefeated, whatever, but the four best teams, I think Michigan, a team built off defense. Texas is red hot, and I'd like to talk about them. Alabama, red hot. And Washington, I think, has the most to prove inside this top four.
Exactly. I think personally, I'm of the mindset, I'll go ahead and answer it. I do think the committee got it right. And for Florida State fans, I know you may be upset, but I want to quote something right now. So this might take me a little bit, but this is from the committee's own guidelines. This is from their own parameters. So if I will, and I quote, the selection committee will select teams using a process that distinguishes among otherwise comparable teams by considering some of the following. Conference championships won, strength of schedule, head-to-head competition, comparative outcomes of common opponents without incenting margin of victory, and other relevant factors such as unavailability of key players and coaches that may have affected a team's performance during the season or will likely affect a team's postseason performance. Ladies and gentlemen, whether you agree or not, I think we can all agree that not having a Heisman hopeful Jordan Travis will inevitably affect Florida State's ability to go in here and be a competitive team. And if anybody wants to give me 2014 Ohio State, where Cardell Jones came in relief of their starting quarterback, Cardell Jones in Ohio State threw for like 700 yards that game. They beat the brakes off of their opponent in their conference championship. If one of the things and one of the parameters we're looking at is other relevant factors such as unavailability, the other is comparative outcomes. Kyle, Florida State just played Louisville, who got beat up by Kentucky, and Kentucky was ran out the building by Bama. It wasn't close. It was a beating. I think the committee has got it right. Here's my next question. Do you think they got the order right?
Yeah, I think, for the most part, I guess, they had to put Michigan at the number one spot. Washington, like I said, I mean, I still think that they could have been, ranked somewhere else. Whatever the case, they've had a great season. So, in terms of how I thought it was going to shake out, yeah, I would say that they got it ranked right with the teams that they have in there. I still think that Georgia should have been in there, and I don't want a 4-team SEC playoff. You'll probably get that next year with 12 teams in there. Just kidding, inside the comment box. But the fact of the matter is, Georgia is a quality team. But the teams that are in there, I like how it sets up, to be honest. So you have Michigan, who's the number one team, a team built off defense, and a team that has a tremendous running back, and JJ played incredible against Ohio State. You have Washington. The play of Michael Penix has been phenomenal. The guy is certainly a baller, but they do have the number 91 ranked defense, and I think that is going to come into play against Texas. I don't like to make score predictions early, but I wouldn't be surprised if this Texas team really puts it to Washington. So I'm curious to see the early lines on Vegas on that matchup. You have Alabama red hot coming off a victory against Michigan, and I think this Alabama team, they have that chip on their shoulder. There's a lot of people that don't believe that this team could get here, that they could win the SEC West, that they could win the overall SEC, and Coach Saban is loving that. He's relishing it. And I think that when you talk to about Florida State, once again, yeah, the comparative scores. You look at the fact that Louisville was just beat by Kentucky, and the fact that Alabama could have beat Kentucky by however many points they wanted to, and same thing with Georgia. So the SEC, the lone candidate, the lone rep, I should say, for the SEC inside the playoff committee was Mitch Leinart, who's the AD at Kentucky. So his input was probably heavy today, honestly, because he saw Louisville, he saw Georgia, and he saw Alabama. Are those teams the same? And I think the downward trajectory of Florida State's season, you know who told us this a long time ago? Was Vegas. As soon as Jordan Travis went out, the odds of Florida State winning the college football national championship went from like plus 800 to plus like 4,000. So Vegas wasn't afraid to come out and say that they are not one of the best 4 teams in college football. I'm sure there's a lot of Seminole fans that are really upset and saying that there's a SEC bias, just like Bama fans say that there's Bama fatigue. But the 4 best teams, we're about to see who the top best 4 is, and likely that's Alabama. I've said this all along. I don't think this Alabama team is going to lose again. That's not being fancy. That's not being homerish. I just think that this is a team that's balanced on offense. The offense has continued to get better week by week. In defense, to be able to stop a balanced Georgia team like that, the adjustments that they made on the fly against Brock Bowers last night, super impressive. They've been battle tested. Jane Daniels they faced Georgia and Carson Beck. They faced Tennessee. They faced Lane Kiffin, and they faced Steve Sarkisian. So this defense has been battle tested, and I think they're going to make a run here in the playoffs.
I agree completely. Look, let all naysayers know, and they have done just that. Now, King, listen, I do sympathize with you if you're a Florida State fan for this reason. You went undefeated. Yep. And so you're sitting there asking yourself, what do we need to do? And I know someone said earlier that the committee has never looked at that last parameter about injuries. That's not true. Mm-hmm. They looked at that parameter whenever Ohio State's quarterback went down in 2014, but Ohio State went into their conference championship and eviscerated the team in front of them. I guess my point is this. Florida State's defense still looks good. It still looks like a good defense. Iowa's got a good defense. Mm. You have got to be able to score. Do we think Florida State, and King, I do have a genuine question. Do you think Florida State would be favored in a neutral site playoff game against Michigan, Washington, Texas, Bama, or Georgia for that matter? And if the answer is no, then the committee is after trying to put the 4 best teams in. I think one thing that gets very uncomfortable in this debate, Kyle, and it's the reason why they said it 4 or 5 times. Yep. We are not after the most deserving teams. Mm-hmm. If that was the case, Liberty is undefeated and their starting quarterback is still healthy. Yep. Liberty's not in the college football playoffs because they're not better than Florida State. Mm-hmm. They're not better than these teams. So yeah, these nuances do matter. King, oh, you're a Clemson fan. All fair and good. Clemson had a really good season in terms of being able to take what they had in terms of where they started and where they finished. A lot of respect for that. Mm-hmm. But once again, who would Florida State be favored over? And if you say nobody, well, then the committee inevitably did the right job because they're not after the 4 most deserving. They're after the 4 best. Yep. And that is something that I think we need to come to terms with. Yes, what would a score of FSU versus Michigan be? Please tell me. I have no idea, but FSU was barely able to score on Louisville, who made Devin Leary look really good. And I think that Michigan would find a way. Yeah, North Alabama came in there and tested FSU before they went on a run. Sure. but it's not like FSU has been some world beater. I know you keep saying the Auburn game, but what about Boston College? I guess my question is, FSU's best win, King, is LSU. That's Alabama's third best win. Hard to rectify that. What do you think, Kyle?
I think when you look to Florida State, because look, their fans are completely upset, and I get it. I mean, you finished 13-0, you're undefeated, and you were up in the rankings. The committee, was really high on you throughout the entire season. But this is okay. They were down 13-0 against North Alabama with Jordan Travis in. Okay. When he went out, Rodemaker comes in and they score 58 points and they win that game. Then they go down to Florida and that game is kind of back and forth. Florida is not a good SEC team, okay? But they're able to win in the Swamp, which is commendable. Yes, you go against Louisville, my goodness. That game against Louisville was terrible. The ACC, that's the championship game. How did Louisville win 10 games? I have no idea. My goodness. I don't even know where those two teams, Louisville specifically, I don't know where they'd be inside the SEC. So I get it. If you're a Florida State fan, you're upset. When I look to Florida State and I look to their overall resume, was impressed with their win against LSU. But that we have a Clemson fan in here. The Clemson should have beat Florida State. If it wasn't for a missed field goal that sent the game into overtime, Clemson wins that game 100%. Boston College should have beat Florida State as well. You can point back at Alabama and say, you needed a miracle to beat Auburn, or, you can point to the score against South Florida. I think the thing that the committee really valued was the strength of the overall schedule, right? That schedule was tough. It was a gauntlet, and to beat number one Georgia is something that Florida State couldn't say because they play in the ACC. Here's the thing for Florida State. If you're the athletic director, if you're at the higher-ups, get out of the ACC. Get out of there. You want to come to the SEC? Find a way to get an invite into the SEC. Join a different conference because the ACC is looked down upon. They really are. Join the Big Ten. However you can do it, get out of the ACC because I think today the ACC affected your overall ranking 100%. This was a good team. Does it suck to get left out? Of course, but the ACC is not the SEC, and they were rightfully penalized for it because they didn't have the overall strength of schedule.
Well, here's another thing I'll say, Kyle. Whenever we're asking and having this conversation, I get me back to bullet point 4 on the parameters I listed earlier, which talks about other relevant factors such as unavailability of key players and coaches that may have affected a team's performance. Kyle, you and I have heard all year long about the USF close win. No. Remind me again, who didn't play in that USF win that has shown that if you have your starting guy, it makes a world of difference? Who was it that didn't play in that USF game, Kyle?
I think it was Jalen Milroe, right? So Jalen Milroe didn't play. Look, here's something. Nick Saban, that was a chess move what he did because he had to show to some people on the staff, he had to showcase to the world that this team couldn't be what this team is today without Jalen Milroe at quarterback, 100%. Jalen Milroe is going to win a national championship at Alabama. Probably 2, to be honest. He's not going to win the Heisman Trophy this year because his story isn't finished. Next year, with this team, all the sophomores coming back that are now playing like juniors, this team is going to be very dangerous next year. But it was a chess move by Nick Saban, and how he's been able to coach this team has been phenomenal. You talk about Coach of the Year awards, maybe they're all meaningless or whatever. One thing that I don't get is the Big 12 Coach of the Year. How did that go to Mike Gundy over Steve Sarkisian? Steve Sarkisian's done an incredible job with Texas, first 10-win season since 2009. Back to Alabama, the transformation of this team from week 2 to this current point in time was undeniable. Everybody saw it. And like Coach Saban said in postgame, if they needed to pass the eyeball test, they did just that, beating the number 1 ranked team. The committee, I was wondering if the committee somehow would put Michigan over Georgia kind of in the back end rankings to make it a little bit more difficult for Alabama to get into the playoffs. Think about this. If Michigan would have been number 1 and Georgia number 2 and Alabama would have beat number 2 Georgia, I don't know if Alabama gets into the playoffs. So the committee was like, look, you want to be the man, you want to beat the beast, then you got to be able to beat the beast from the East, which is Georgia, and they did that. 45 minutes away from Athens, Georgia. This crowd over here, yeah, Bama fans traveled 100%. It's not that far from Tuscaloosa. Georgia was amped up. It was a loud stadium, very hostile environment, and Alabama comes out with the top win over the number 1 ranked team. There was zero way that they were going to be left out of the college football playoffs after that win last night.
Zero way. Look, you'd have 4 wins per the college football playoffs own parameters. Mm-hmm. And I want to see if I can get, here we go right here. ladies and gentlemen, an updated strength of schedule list I have for you. Alabama comes in at 5th, Washington 11th, Texas
Mm-hmm.
13th,
Oh
Michigan
wow.
33rd, Georgia 37th, Florida State 55th.
Mm-hmm.
So, listen, I understand. I do agree. If you are a
Mm-hmm.
ACC fan, this is an uncomfortable conversation. But once again, get out of your mind this notion that the committee is after the four most deserving teams, because they have
Yeah.
told you
Mm-hmm.
time and time and time again they don't care about that. They're after the four best teams.
Mm-hmm.
There's a reason why TCU got gobsmacked by Kansas State last year and still made it to the playoffs,
Yep.
because they were like, well, deserving isn't a parameter.
Mm-hmm.
We'll send TCU. TCU
Mm-hmm.
got blasted in the college football playoffs. I don't think that the committee wanted that to happen again.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's going to be very interesting, Kyle. What if FSU draws Georgia in a bowl game?
I would
Which
love
I
it.
think is exactly what we'll see.
Yeah, I would love it, and I think Georgia will beat the brakes off Florida State. To be honest, I think that Georgia is, if there's two really really upset teams right now, Georgia and Florida State. Probably more Florida State, but Georgia feels that they're a top 4 team. We just caught buzzsaw in Bama. I'm really hoping that is a matchup. I'd probably like to see Georgia and Oregon. How about Oregon and Florida State? And when you start to look at Florida State versus all these teams, I think all these other teams are the favorites. But whatever the case, Florida State is going to have another opportunity in the bowl game. And who knows? They win that game, they could have, make-believe, national title celebration like Central Florida did a couple years ago. I don't know. But, they're not in the playoffs. You got to get past it and kind of move on to the next thing and continue to show that consistency. Can you do it next year? Can you be here again? Can you prove that you're relevant not only this year but next year as well? Teams that sometimes are able to reach the playoffs, they can't duplicate that type of success. Where's TCU right now?
100%. Now, let's reshift focus here, because we've talked about what is.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about what is to come.
Mm-hmm.
Alabama versus Michigan.
Yeah,
Kyle,
yeah.
what a matchup. I can't wait. Personally, I'm going to go ahead and let it be known. I hope we get a rematch of week 2. I hope we get to see Texas versus Alabama, because I've always said Bama's a different team. And every time I say that, it's not to say Bama's going to beat Texas. Bama was favored to beat Texas the first time, and they didn't take care of business. Do not disrespect this Longhorns team if you think that they're just some pushover. They're not.
No.
Sark has done great work. All I'm saying is it's going to be a different game. Both teams have grown, and I think it would be fireworks. But let's talk about the game that Alabama must endure first. Bama, Michigan. Kyle, how do you feel about this? Because the last time Bama and Michigan lined up, Bama got down and dirty. What are you thinking?
Yeah, so the last time that I saw Michigan and Alabama play, it was in the Citrus Bowl down in Orlando. So I go down there, and that was when Josh Gaddis had just left from Alabama to Michigan. And then you have Jim Harbaugh going up against Nick Saban. It's a good SEO tagline, right? So Alabama's able to win that game under Mac Jones. That was right before the COVID year, before Mac Jones turned into an absolute baller and won a natty for Alabama. So this time around, what you have is Michigan, a team that has been surrounded by headlines that haven't been favorable, right? You have the sign stealing allegations, and you think all that stuff went away? Well, now that they're playing Alabama and all the media that follows Alabama and ESPN that loves Alabama, that is going to be one of the key notes going into this game. Aside from that, Michigan as a football team, what I really like about them is the defense. You look at the defenses statistically, they are a hard-hitting defense. They're hard to pass against. They're hard to run against. They're a quality team on the defensive side. I think where my questions are about this team are on the offensive side. J.J. McCarthy, look, he did really well against Ohio State. He threaded the needle a couple of times, and I was like, my goodness, I think he's 27-1 as a starter or something like that. Blake Corum, absolute warrior. I love the photo of him where like he's bleeding through his nose. Guy's warrior. Where I like Alabama in this particular matchup is the fact that Alabama's defense, as I said earlier, they're built and they're battle tested to stop the pass, but most importantly, stop the run. I think when you look to Alabama versus Georgia last night, Alabama did a fantastic job stopping Georgia on 3rd and short. This is a really gritty defensive line. They got really good and fast outside linebackers that can get to the edge. They got really good inside linebackers. So I like that matchup for Alabama. On the offensive side, it's another nightmare to have to face up with Jalen Milroe. Jalen Milroe, is going to be the best athlete on the field. He's going to be the best quarterback in that game. His deep ball last night wasn't there. He wasn't as accurate as he's been in the past, but I think it was just credit to Georgia. Georgia did a great job blanketing Alabama's wide receivers. Probably
secondary was amazing for Georgia.
The secondary was fantastic for sure. I think it was honestly the best secondary that Alabama has faced since the Texas game. And
I agree.
I mean, because that Texas defense, nobody talks about them, right? It's all Steve Sarkisian and Quinn Ewers, but no, their defense is phenomenal. But yeah, I think they're going to present some challenges for Alabama. I do like the fact that Alabama went to Jam Miller. Jam Miller's another running back that's built to run between the tackles. Roydell Williams has done a really good job this season. Really, really steady player. And then the player Jermaine Burton, dealing with him, he's a problem. He's an alpha. People don't like the way that he talks and stuff. He gets into your mind, and he's a big-time player, and he rises up in big-time games. And then, of course, don't forget about Isaiah Bond, right? Isaiah Bond has been, he's really starting to trend upwards. He's dangerous. He's a sophomore. And don't forget Kendrick Law. So all these weapons that Michigan is going to have to account for, they did a good job against Ohio State, who has elite weapons, but they haven't faced a team like this all season long. It's a different team than Penn State or Ohio State.
And you want to know one of the reasons why they are so different, Kyle? What's the first thing Michigan's going to have to account for? Milroe.
Yeah. Yep.
Ohio State, McCord, he's had his ups, don't get me wrong.
For sure.
To start for Ohio State is unbelievably impressive. Only a handful, truly, every year could start for that place.
Yep.
He's not Jalen Milroe.
No.
And I don't even mean I'm not trying to slight him. What I'm saying is Jalen Milroe has an ability, a trump card, that if you have everything covered downfield, if you're playing man, please, Michigan, play man. Play man across the board, please. Yeah. I beg of you. You're playing man, they're going deep. Jalen Milroe will look up and do something Kyle McCord can't do, or at least McCord can't do it at that level. Yeah. He will take off, and good luck stopping him. I look at it like this, Kyle. Mm-hmm. Michigan has an unbelievable rush attack. I mean, that dual-headed monster they have at running back is unbelievable. They have a fantastic offensive line led by arguably the best offensive line coach in the nation. Respect to Bill Bedenbaugh out there at Oklahoma. That's a guy that typically gets 3 stars and turns them into the highest-paid offensive lineman in the NFL. But Sharon Moore at Michigan. I mean, we would be remiss if we did not give him his flowers for the work he has done on that offensive line. It is unbelievable. They haven't faced Dallas Turner, Chris Braswell, Otis, Aboigbe, and Tim Keenan. They haven't faced Lawson and Campbell. They haven't faced Kool-Aid, Terry and Arnold, Caleb Downs, who, by the way, I said this not too long ago, he's the number 3 graded safety in all of college football right now. As a true freshman, he's different. And Kyle, to your point, I think Alabama is going to be grinding the tape of that Georgia game. You want to know why? They left meat on the bones. They left meat on the bones. To your point, that Georgia secondary was great, but there were a few times where there were opportunities that Milroe the past few weeks has absolutely been capitalizing that we just didn't even get to. And that's fine. That's credit to Georgia's defense. But how about this? Bama dropped 4 interceptions that hit defensive backs in the hand. Take in 2 of those. I mean, what if they get 3 points? Now we're talking 24-30. What if they get 10 points off? Now we're talking 24-37. I'm just saying Bama didn't even capitalize on all the opportunities present and still down the number 1 team in the nation. So when I'm looking at Michigan, I think the question I have first and foremost, Kyle, do you think they can keep this Bama defense honest in the passing game? Because I think that's a necessity.
I don't know. I think they're gonna struggle with Alabama's defense, to be honest. I think that they haven't faced pass rushers like this before. Last night, Carson Beck was uncomfortable. He had only been sacked 10 times coming into that game, which is a phenomenal number. And Alabama was able to get to him. And Alabama's secondary played at a very high level, and Alabama's depth, as you know, at this level, is really good. I mean, Kool-Aid goes out with concussion, and you swap in Trey Amos, who played really good. He played high-level football, just how he's been all season long. Terran Arnold has made himself a lot of money. Those guys are great. Caleb Downs, as you said, at the safety spot, probably the best safety in the country as just a freshman, which is crazy. Whether you have Jalen Key, Christian Story, Devontae Smith, who is now healthy, these are all guys that are capable of playing at a very high level in the secondary, along with Malachi Moore, who did a great job last night against Brock Bowers. Overall, I mean, this Alabama defense is good, lights out, complete at every single phase. Secondary, elite. Linebackers, outside, inside, elite. Defensive line, very talented. And that's why I like this Alabama defense, is because there's just not one specific unit that is necessarily that we hype on. I think the best guys are the edge rushers, but overall, they're tremendous. And the best thing about this team is they're healthy. Alabama's football team, over the past since I covered them, they've always had these injuries that you get to this point in the season, you're like, is this guy going to come back? Alabama's healthy. Outside of Jace at running back, these guys are absolutely healthy, which is a very scary thing going into this back end and going into the playoffs, is that Alabama's healthy on both sides of the ball.
Both sides, they're going to be healthy,
Yeah.
and they're still getting better.
Yeah.
Tommy Rees, every single game, is doing something that I'm like, man, you are really in your bag. This is why I kept saying, Kyle, all year, this is something before you and I would get together, I would always talk about Tommy Rees. I would bring up my age, and I just had my birthday on Friday. So what a better birthday gift than for Alabama to go out there and win the SEC championship game in a playoff berth. Happy belated birthday to me. I'll take
happy
it.
Birthday, man.
But here's the thing. He's 3 years older than me, Kyle. Think how wild. I'm 29. He's 32, and he's leading Alabama. He'd never worked with a quarterback like Jalen Milroe. And then he came in, and Saban said, oh, I know you do what you do, but now you have to adjust to us.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, and Kyle, please correct me if I'm wrong, Saban let Rees implement some little wrinkles and kind of adjust some things, and now I think Rees is showing everybody his future unbelievably bright in terms of what he's going to be able to do. How can Michigan stop this Alabama offense? We've talked about Michigan's offense. I like J.J. McCarthy, veteran quarterback. I love their running back duo. You got to test this Bama defense deep. We haven't seen Michigan be able to do that consistently. But let's talk about Michigan's defense, because in my opinion, that's the best thing they do. That defense is really, really good.
They are. And
how can Alabama capitalize?
And their secondary is great, and they're hard hitters, and they can cover space. I mean, against Ohio State, think about Ohio State's elite wide receivers. I think when you look to the great wide receivers in college football, you have Ohio State's wide receivers, you have Texas's wide receivers, you have LSU's wide receivers, Texas A&M. I know that the program went south, but their wide receivers are really good, and I think you have Alabama's wide receivers. So in Michigan, I watched that entire game. They did a great job against Ohio State's wide receivers, which I was really impressed with. They were able to cover space, whether that was in man, whether that was in zone. They were really good in open field and tackling. So this secondary is capable, and they're here, and that could be probably one of their best units. So I think if their secondary can rise up and make make Jalen Milroe uncomfortable, come up with an interception or something like that, because last night Jalen Milroe was not going to force a bad ball. Jalen Milroe was not going to create a turnover. He was going to, maybe try for some space, eat a sack, but he was not going to turn over a football, and that was smart football. You'd rather take a 3rd and 15 than turn the football over, right? Forcing a ball. So Jalen Milroe has grown up in that sense. But if you want to beat Alabama, it's hard to do because of Jalen Milroe, right? Like, he can beat you over the top. His intermediate passing, which everybody has kind of just hyper focused on, it has improved. Watch yesterday. It was
that Niblack out route, which was about 15 yards. That was an NFL throw.
100%. Malik Benson, he dropped the pass over the middle of the field. That was on Malik, not on Jalen. And then he can run. You saw what he was able to do with 75 yards, that drive in the back end against Georgia. Against Georgia's defense. What was Georgia's defense? Like the number 6, 7 defense in the entire country? So trying to account for Milroe is just really difficult to do. All their running backs are really elite. Their wide receivers are good. So I don't know. I mean, stopping Alabama's offense is going to be challenging for everybody in college football. That's why I think they win the national title, is because consistent defense. They're going to challenge your quarterback, and their offense is going to put points on the board. It's really difficult to stop Jalen Milroe, and we haven't seen a lot of programs be able to do it. And I don't even think that we've seen Milroe really take over a game yet, which is crazy. I think when you look to his stats against Auburn, I mean, over 220 yards passing, 100 yards rushing, but we haven't seen him go monster Milroe mode yet, and I think he's going to do that in the playoffs. That's why it's kind of a travesty that these awards are determined kind of around this time. I think awards are starting to be determined next Friday night, but we haven't even seen the best of Jalen Milroe yet.
And that's the scary part about it.
Yeah.
Jalen Milroe's ceiling is still
Yeah.
a ways away, right? We are
Yeah.
still, and Kyle, I say this all the time, but to everybody in here, open question, right? This is one of, if not one of, I think it is the most interactive show you will find from an actual publication. Shout out to Bleacher Report for giving us this platform.
For sure.
You're not going to hop on another publication out there, a major one, and find the interaction that you're getting over here on Bleacher Report. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
So I want to open this up to everybody in here. My question is this. How impressive is it, the development we've seen from Jalen Milroe in a 1-year span, as opposed to what we saw with him under Bill O'Brien for 2 years? I know he was the backup, and inevitably the backup isn't going to get the lion's share of opportunities like the starter.
Yeah.
He has developed so much over the course of the year. Talk to us all about that, because you're boots on the ground in Tuscaloosa.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's one of the major storylines of college football has been the overall growth of him as a player, because you have somebody who is so physically talented and gifted, and to watch his maturation process. And he keeps saying this. He's like, I'm not a finished product. He's not. He's really not. He's getting better every single week. The more he takes in from Tommy Rees or Nick Saban. Nick Saban meets with the quarterbacks every single Sunday, all the quarterbacks. So I'm sure that they already met today at some point, and they kind of go over things that they need to work on, whether it be field awareness. You saw him throw over the line of scrimmage twice against Auburn. Those are things that he was really cognizant of in this particular game. I love the fact this was one of the plays that I really liked last night. Jalen Milroe, it was a designed quarterback run, and he's out to the left, and he could have went out of bounds. He could have put his head down, but he slid down, right? That's called field awareness. So seeing him grow in understanding clock management, understanding, down and distance, not forcing bad balls. Think about how you've seen him grow up, and he has that deep ball ability. He can run the football, and the better that he gets with Tommy Rees has been really great, because Tommy Rees is now they've developed some continuity, and those guys are meshing well. I mean, just as you said, Tommy Rees is a young coach. And I'm glad that he's, that Indiana job was all smoke, because he needs to stay with Saban, 100%. The more he stays with Saban, the better. You got to stay with Coach Saban for more than a year. 2 years, and then you kind of, see what other options there are. But if I'm 31 years old and I have an opportunity to learn from Coach Saban and have an opportunity to coach Jalen Milroe, Kendrick Lott, Isaiah Bond, Jam Miller, all those guys, I stick around because I know what's coming back next year. Think about this, Ty, okay? Everybody on Alabama's team can come back if they wanted to next year, outside of Seth and I think there's one more senior. But other than that,
Isn't it Oots?
no, I think it might be Oots. There might be another senior, but everybody else has a COVID year still. So, for example,
Yeah.
Jermaine Burton, he's a senior right now. If he wanted to come back, he could come back.
Dallas Turner.
It's Will Reichard. Will Reichard can't come back. He's already been in
that's right.
2 senior days or whatever. But I think Seth and Will are some of the guys that can't come back. But everybody else can come back if they wanted to, which is really, really crazy to think about.
Now, don't get us wrong, guys. We're not over here projecting Dallas Turner to forego the NFL. He'll go to the league and he will make a
100%.
beautiful living in the NFL. That's not our contention here. We are simply pointing out to all of you, the viewers, this Bama team has a lot of youth. And Kyle, I'm going to go one up, man. I completely agree about Rees, his age. You want to stay there. You want to stay around what Alabama does. Look at the resurgence of Sark's career, but why not stay for Julian Sayin? I mean, goodness gracious, you have the number 1 quarterback in the nation coming in, who I believe he'll be sitting behind Jalen next year, learning. And what a leader. What an absolute leader to be learning from. He'll have Ty Simpson there. Those two are going to push each other to new heights. Why not wait for Julian Sayin and see what you can do with that? Sky is the limit. I want to hear your take on that, but I also have another little caveat I want to hear your take on.
All right.
Kyle, how blessed has Alabama been with the quarterback position? I know this isn't about Michigan, but let's just talk about how blessed Bama has been with the quality of leader they have had from their quarterback. Going from Jalen Hurts to Tua to Mac to Bryce to Jalen Milroe, that's an uncommon thread of just unbelievable leadership.
Yeah, I mean, and I've been here to see it all. Honestly, when I got here, Jalen Hurts was the quarterback. They had just lost to Clemson, so coming back was that first year that I was here. So that was in 2017. That was my first season covering Alabama. So I've been able to watch Jalen Hurts, Tua Tagovailoa. I've been able to watch Mac Jones. I've been able to watch Bryce Young, and now you're seeing the development of Jalen Milroe. I mean, those are 5 quarterbacks. It's been an amazing ride, and the storylines behind each of them have all been different and all been amazing in their own regard. So check this out. I'm about to drop a major nugget on you guys. All right, you guys ready for some really big intel? Okay, so at the beginning of the season, it was supposed to be Dylan Lonergan that was going to start for Alabama. There was a large group that wanted Dylan Lonergan to start, like on the staff, and the only guy that continued to push for Jalen Milroe, continued and basically overrode everything, was Coach Saban. Said that we're not going to win unless it's Jalen Milroe. I mean, Coach Saban, his belief in Jalen Milroe and what he's done with these quarterbacks is phenomenal. So I think you're right, Ty. Like, you look to the quarterbacks coming back. You have look, the transfer portal opens up soon, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it and say that all these guys are going to stay on Alabama's team. They're not. They can't. It's about organizational roster management, and sometimes it's better for the player to go and hop into the transfer portal or whatever. That stuff's coming on Monday, tomorrow. That's when tomorrow is about to be transfer portal bananas. I don't know for Alabama, but it's going to happen. So the quarterback's currently on the roster. You got Jalen Milroe. You got Ty Simpson, redshirt freshman. You have Tyler Buckner. People get they get so mad when I even mention his name. Clearly he's not going to play, but he's still on the roster. Then you have
it's like the boogeyman.
Yeah. Then you have Dylan Lonergan. Okay. As I said, you have Eli Holstein, and then you have Julian Sayin coming in. I mean, and there's some people that think that, oh, Milroe's gone next year. No, he's not. He's coming back. And then there's that group of people that'll be like, well, you got to start Julian Sayin over Jalen Milroe. No, you don't. There was a large percentage that wanted Bryce Young, his freshman year, to start over Mac Jones. No, be patient, because guess what happened that year? You went undefeated under Mac Jones. So, and then the next year, you saw Bryce Young take over, right? So the quarterback competition here at Alabama isn't going anywhere. There's going to be another cake that has to be baked once Jalen Milroe is gone. But the quarterback development at Alabama, it's amazing how it turned into from the running backs, right? Trent Richardson, Derrick Henry, Mark Ingram, and now you have these quarterbacks that have really been, kind of the Mount Rushmore of these last 4 years, and all those quarterbacks and Jalen Milroe up there with those guys after his performance this year, 100%.
Love it. And so as we're winding down, right, final thoughts on Michigan. Who do you have winning that game? What's your keys to victory? I'll go, and then I have a question for you after that.
All right. I think that the keys to the game are unleash Jalen Milroe. 100%. I mean, it's pretty simple. And I think the defense has to come up with some big plays. I think they missed out on a couple big plays against Georgia, a couple interceptions that they could have had. Those are momentum shifters, and it'll be a game of momentum. But I think that Alabama, I wouldn't be surprised to see if Alabama is a favorite early on. I haven't even checked the odds on this game, but I wouldn't be surprised to see Alabama as an odds favorite in this game against Michigan. Michigan is going to have their hands full. We know that. Michigan is a good team. They're a good team on defense, but specifically they're going to have to really bow out on the offensive side and come up with something really creative to be able to beat Alabama in the Rose Bowl.
And this is why I ask, right? And part of me really prays Vegas, ESPN. I need you to do me one more favor. Put Michigan as a favorite. Put him as a 6-point favorite. Yeah. Put him as a 7-point favorite, yeah. Please. I'm not being facetious. No, I'm not being funny.
Yeah.
Please. Yeah. Please continue your run of doubt, and they will make you pay. I agree completely, Kyle. I have Alabama downing Michigan. I think that there will be some people out there that are kind of surprised by how close the game is to the early portion. I think we're going to be in for a good old-fashioned slugfest. People like you and I are going to love it through the first half. I think coming out of the second half, Alabama has been sensational at adjustments this year. Yeah. I actually think that's where this staff has earned their bread, butter, everything. Steele has been amazing at adjustments on defense. Point, Kyle, Georgia drove down the field like nothing. Their first drive,
Yeah.
scored, and then Bama made adjustments. They said, okay, we can't give you that quick underneath and let you have 5-6 yards of pop. We're going to play up on
Yeah.
you. They didn't score easily.
Yeah.
Again, they scored, but they earned it.
Yeah.
I think we're going to see adjustments from Bama. I have Bama pulling out. I think this leads me into my question, and it surrounds the other playoff matchups and how we could see that go. Kyle, do you believe we will see a rematch of Bama versus Texas in the national championship game?
Yeah.
Chad, I want to hear from you.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I think it's going to be Alabama versus Texas when you look down the road and rat poison it for sure. And this is going to be a really interesting fact is the fact that this could happen. If Alabama beats Michigan and Texas beats Washington, Texas and Alabama would play at NRG Stadium in Houston. The ironic thing about that is where Texas beat Alabama was in the state of Alabama in Tuscaloosa. Now Alabama has an opportunity to go to Houston to play Texas. And wouldn't it be amazing if they're able to beat Texas in the state of Texas? And guess where Jalen Milroe is from?
Katie.
Yep. So yeah. I mean, like that's amazing. I mean, can you imagine? A couple years ago, Bryce had an opportunity to win the Natty in Los Angeles. It didn't fall through, but another opportunity for Jalen to get it done. But it starts with Michigan, and I think it starts with the preparation to today. You soak in that win against Georgia, but I asked Isaiah Bond last night after the game. I was like, job's not finished, right? And he was like, no. Job's not finished. So Alabama in their locker room, they have this pyramid, right? And it goes up and it has be undefeated in SEC, win the SEC West, win the SEC championship, and then it gets closer. Make the college football playoffs, win a bowl game, and then win the national title game. So there's still a couple pyramid blocks to climb. What they did last night was monumental. Everybody heard it. And, the win before that was thrilling. They took care of Auburn, took care of Georgia, similar scores. Now at Michigan, this is big-time football. Jalen Milroe and his squad and the defense, everybody's ready for it. I mean, it's time for some major college football showdowns. The Rose Bowl, Pasadena, here we come.
I always knew I was dyslexic. I always had this problem as a child, Kyle. But I didn't know it was until last week that I realized it wasn't 007 my whole life. I've been reading it wrong. It's 0017 Bond, Isaiah Bond out there. Yeah. And he is letting everybody know. That's on me. That's dyslexia. I'll blame it on that. Yeah. I didn't see the 1 before the 7, but now I know. I will not mistake that again. Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, this is what I will say. The committee was after the 4 best. And in my opinion, Kyle, we just got done on your show. We've been talking to each other back and forth through text on the phone. This is the exact 4 I had in the exact order I had. So inevitably, I think they made the right decision. You think they made the right decision. There's uncomfortable conversations. It's not about most deserving. It's about best. Yep. They got the 4 best teams. And now we get to see an absolute treat unfold in front of us. I can't wait. Absolutely can't wait. But with that being said, we have got a lot of exciting topics still in front of us, but that's for a different day. Rest easy out there. Kyle, before I let you go, where can everybody find all of your sensational content? Because you really are Alabama football personified.
Well, then it's easy. Then Bama football on YouTube. Appreciate Bleacher Report for giving us this platform to talk about the college football playoffs. It's been really nice to link up with Bleacher Report. And, of course, Utah, I mean, you do such great work. So I'm really grateful for the opportunities that are coming our way. But all the coverage back on Bama football on YouTube. And I hope to see you guys there.
Absolutely. Go follow him. And if you're already on YouTube, hop over to Around the Table Sports. That's where you can find my channel. Of course, I'm an Alabama fan, but we talk all college football content, and that leads to some wild evenings, some wild streams, and it is a good time. Bleacher Report, I cannot speak highly enough about what they're doing over here on the college football sector. They have a vision, and I think their vision is the exact way that we're going to see everything move here in the next few years. Can't thank them enough. And I truly do mean this, guys. You're not going to find on ESPN or any of these other platforms a major publication getting the most notable fan analyst, someone who's with the team all the time, and Kyle, and someone like myself to come out there and speak to you guys. Yeah. This is truly different. Can't say enough about it. Kyle, my man, thank you so much. Always a pleasure to link up. Until next time, we'll catch y'all later, and I'll have to drop it. Roll Tide. Okay. I think we should be good.
We good?
It says